welcome to the third EU qualifier for the One Nation of Gamers Summer Circuit. I'm here with Hotform to bring you guys this tournament. How you doing, Hotform?
Good. I'm looking forward to these games today. So we have Tyros versus Unskiller coming up first, and we have RDU versus
Pavel.
Yes, Pavel.
Pavel. Yeah. So kind of a mix of somewhat known people and some up-and-comers. RDU, obviously, pretty much everyone is aware of. I know Pavel, a lot of people talk him up, a lot of the European people I know. And then these other two people I'm not too familiar with, but Unskiller apparently is qualified for the next Gfinity LAN, so definitely a contender to qualify for the feature tournament.
Yeah, and I mean, these guys have had to go through a huge open bracket. The way this tournament is structured, you have to win, I don't know, they've had to win 7 best-of-5 series already, I think.
Yep.
So they've proven themselves at this point, and they're going up against other people who have proven themselves. So pretty much no matter what, it's going to be some good games.
Yeah, the open bracket's really grueling to get through. You know, it takes a little bit of luck, a lot of skill, a lot of time. So these players definitely have something to prove here. Don't want to walk away with, not really nothing. Everyone's going to walk away with some GEICO points, some World Championship points, and first through third get a little bit of money. But, of course, the winner of this tournament will walk away qualifying for the second feature tournament and a potential ticket to PAX for the grand finals.
Yeah, and I think the top people from today also earn a little bit of money for their trouble as well. Some guaranteed cash. So the first match, I guess we could talk about the classes they're going to bring.
Yeah, so pretty similar lineups here. Both players have a rogue and a warrior, but there's a little bit of a difference. Unskiller brought druid, Tyros brought warlock.
So to me, the warlock is a way more standard pick. There's like 3 different types of warlock you can bring, and I don't have the information on which type he is, but there's the Malagos warlock, the demon warlock, and the hand warlock with giants. There's a lot of different variations on those, but I think warlock has been one of those super standard decks to pair with warrior right now in a lot of lineups.
Yeah, the top 3 classes by representation have pretty much been warrior, hunter, and warlock, and I actually think warlock maybe right under warrior. Not exactly sure on the numbers there, but definitely heavily represented. I would assume, I think the best assumption would be it's like Malagos Warlock. That seems to be the newest flavor of the month. But like you said, lots of different variations for that class, whereas Druid is pretty standard. Usually you're just going to see the double combo list. Maybe there's more taunts than normal. But looks like we are going to get into game 1 pretty soon here.
Sweet.
And look at the classes they picked.
Wow, it's so it looks like he's playing a Zoo Warlock. Tyros is playing a Zoo Warlock.
Looks, I would say the Dr. Boom probably hints toward it being more of the Demon Lock, where they play more of the late game cards. Mal'Ganis, Dr. Boom, maybe even Sea Giants, just to kind of go along with the they can't big game hunter them all concept.
So what do you think of this match? Rogue has pretty particular strategies in each match that I think you're looking for certain cards. Like often I would say Blade Flurry is going to be one of the most important ones to have, but
yeah, the Rogue is basically kind of in a defensive position for a while and really tries to flip the aggression at kind of a key point later in the game. But like you said, the Blade Flurry is going to be a really big comeback card for Unskiller in this matchup. Going to let him just completely clear board, develop some minions, get some damage in. But off the bat, this is definitely one of the ways you can win against Zoo, is making a big Edwin Van Cleef. It's pretty tough to answer. But luckily for Tyros, actually, he has a decent answer in the form of Abusive Sergeant power overwhelming here. But it does set him off of his curve.
What do you think of using the backstab and prepping the fan last turn. He could have backstabbed the Haunted Creeper, and then it would have left the Voidwalker alive.
Yeah, I definitely think that it was a little inefficient to, prep out something like a Deadly Poison that last turn. But I guess he's just valuing just really setting up this Edwin to attack. Unfortunately, it really won't get through. But by saving that fan, he's actually going to get value off of it now.
Yeah, he gets a much better fan now. He would have got a 1 buff larger Van Clef as well by using the backstab, but I guess he wants to use the backstab to kill a creature later.
Yeah, backstab definitely going to get value at some point in this match. It might actually be a while, surprisingly, but as soon as the Warlock draws something like a Knife Juggler, Flame Imp, anything with 2 health, really, the backstab just tempos it out. But I think the Warlock is just going to look to present bigger threats. Like, Dr. Boom is actually extremely good against Rogue. They really don't have a great answer in their deck for it. But actually, Unskiller is just going to throw out the backstab now.
They don't have a great answer, except that Unskiller has picked a BGH as his tech card, which will certainly help.
Oh, is there a Big Game Hunter in his hand? I actually can't see the Rogue hand right now, so my bad on that. But
yeah. No, you're right. I think that
Big Game Hunter will definitely get the Dr. Boom. But
yeah,
Tyroz won't expect that.
It's one of those cards against Rogue that you can't use efficient Rogue spells to remove it because you don't want to sap it or they're going to get more boom bots, and then 7 HP is pretty tough. So it's cool to see that tech choice from him. Especially when the most popular decks right now with Patron Warrior and the Malagos Warlock don't really use any BGH-able targets.
Yeah. The BGH definitely, like you said, a pretty big tech choice, expecting to see stuff like the Handlock. I know that a lot of players have used that as kind of a counter strategy in Conquest of having one deck that they want to potentially 3-0, if not take quite a few games off. And Handlock has been a pretty big target for that strategy, I think, as it's just pretty much, same old story. You just BGH their threats, really put on a lot of pressure, and they can't do much about it.
So this hand couldn't be too much better from Unskiller with Prep, Sprint, and a BGH all prepared for Dr. Boom.
Yep. Definitely a great turn for him in what is normally not a good turn. And even draws a heal bot, which will help him stabilize if the Warlock, tries to get face damage in here. But I don't even think he'll really need to heal for 8. Being at 18 on turn 7 against a Zoo, that's really pretty safe. You're not really in the range of any big combos. Like we see right here, the largest from-hand damage Tyraz's deck can really do is 9 with Power Overwhelming Doomguard.
So what do you think he does here?
Well, you really want to Doomguard this turn. So he's basically choosing, does he want to develop an egg or just throw out a power to remove a minion? I think he's going to go with the power, which pretty obvious by the fact that he's pointing it, but the power just lets him remove an extra minion here. And he's pretty much crutching on this Boombot hit to kill off the 4-2, I guess.
Yeah.
So just putting all his eggs in that basket, and I would expect him to just Doomguard face, yeah.
So he sets the Rogue to 13, not too bad of a position. You want to make sure you have that.
Ooh. Yeah, I think he would have rather the bomb hit the BGH to make his Doomguard a little less removable, but hitting face for 4 was good. Don't know if I lagged out there, or...
Yeah, there was a little hiccup there.
Okay, well, second Doomguard off the top has to be the best draw for Tyroz here.
Yeah, no doubt.
But like I talked about earlier, kind of like the Rogue turning the aggression onto the Warlock, he's actually going to trade twice. Wow. Really respecting stuff like Tinker's Sharpsword Oil, which wasn't actually in the hand for Unskiller. His hand's just basically full of minions and, you know, clunky stuff. But a 3 or double Spellpower Blade Flurry is pretty much going to be enough, and I think that really just locks up the game.
Well, the top decks continue. Nice Juggler and Implosion.
Juggler into Implosion. You can't really ask for better stuff except for that 2 roll. And
unfortunate.
That could be game. I don't think he has a 100% way to land the oil onto his minion. So it's a 50-50 for lethal.
It's really cool to see the Harrison in Unskiller's hand too. Just such a tech-heavy rogue deck with Harrison and a BGH, but gets the win. So
seen a lot of weapon removal tech in this meta, with Patron being such a dominant deck, and also Rogue making a bit of a comeback. So Unskiller's going to take game 1, get the Rogue win out of the way. I don't think that was an extremely important win. I think it's, you know, pretty okay against all of Tyraz's decks. So not really going to run away with the series off that win, but always good to win game 1.
Yeah, I agree. I'm sure Tyraz looks at that and says, well, you know, it could have been a Rogue Mirror, and that might have been my best shot. Patron Warrior, which I assume is his Warrior, is not an amazing match against Rogue, so he's probably willing to take that loss and look to beat one of the other decks instead.
Yeah. Tyra's just going to stick with Zoo going into game 2, and Unskiller has to switch, and switches to his Druid. Do you see Wild Growth? Always happy to see that card when you're playing Druid.
Yep. I'd give a little bit of favor to the Warlock in this match, just because the Warlock hits the opening curve better, and they have a lot of mechanics to push, like a tempo switch. Things like Implosion or Bane of Doom are both really good when you can kill a minion and play a minion, because a Druid doesn't have a lot of mechanics like that.
Yeah. The cards like Swipe and Keep of the Grove are pretty efficient removal, but they really have to line up basically perfectly with what the Warlock is doing. If there's ever a turn where the Druid can't efficiently remove things, then it gets really rough. And I would expect to see a 25% chance to snipe off this Shade this turn, which might just be game if it happens.
Yeah, that would be pretty glorious. Unskiller needs a 4-drop, and then his curve is pretty perfect. So if he could pick up a Keeper or a Shredder next turn, then that's probably about the best position you could ask for against a Zoo. He thinks about it.
Yeah. I think this is pretty much the only play. He might consider holding the Abusive, knowing now that he missed that juggle. But I'd kind of like to see him just push for damage. He's mostly thinking about the card Swipe. If he doesn't play it, his opponent would get a complete board clear with Swipe. He still does get a complete board clear with Swipe, but he saves an Abusive this way.
I think next turn he can use the Abusive with the Void Terror, or at least that would be a good plan.
And Shredder comes off the top, but he's going to go a Savage Roar just to get rid of this Knife Juggler, really keep the aggression down, and not attacking, basically playing around Implosion this turn.
That was a really tactical choice. I think a lot of people would just see that opening curve as a Druid and immediately play the creature, but maybe he knew that, you know, his guy might be at risk to juggles, and there's a Creeper on the board ready to give extra juggles, so it wasn't going to be too favorable.
Yeah, I guess just really wants to protect his board for the late game, just keep the Zoo's board down as much as possible, and doesn't really want to end the game with Savage Roar, just looking to stabilize on board before then.
Still pretty tough position. Your board can be, like the Lotheb can be traded on right away. Always can use the Shade. I like that. I like that play a lot, actually. He knows that Lotheb protects him from Bane of Doom and Implosion, so this is a great turn to use the extra creature.
Yeah. Basically, he's played around Implosion pretty much perfectly this whole game. Now, obviously, it just can't be used, and it came off the top, so definitely well played by Unskiller here. Just really trying to fight for the board.
Well, dude, Doomguard here. Doomguard, kill the Lotheb.
He's thinking about it. Yep, looks like he's just going to go for the very aggressive Doom Guard there. Those are probably two of the ones he didn't want to pitch. Void Terror, really not that amazing without an egg or a Void Collar to activate it. So pretty stranded in his hand at the moment.
Yeah,
Imp Gang Boss is okay, but
that was a pretty disastrous toss to know that he threw away like the implosion as well. Unskiller's going to feel a little safer because before we could see he was worrying about that. Also, it would be great against the Sylvanas here just to add some extra creatures to the board.
yeah. Yeah, Tyraz doesn't have a great way to play around Sylvanas, and so it's one of those things where it's basically almost just better than playing a taunt this turn because your opponent's likely to respond to it, and even if they don't respond to it, you get to punish them by stealing something. So the Druid's going to go really low on life this game, I think, but it should just be completely fine. Getting a steal next turn, setting up taunts going later into the game, and as long as there's not any insane drawouts from the Warlock here, I'd say the Druid's in a really good position to win.
What do you think about trading the Creeper into Sylvanas and then hitting it with the Doomguard so that you could guarantee it only steals 1/1?
Yeah, he's basically doing that, but he's also just playing the Void Terror this turn to pop it. So wants to get out 1/1s, force it to potentially steal a 1/1. That would be what he's hoping for here. Just pushed in that extra 1 damage, I guess. Really wants all the damage possible. But with a Sledge Belcher coming out from the Druid, and probably just more heals and taunts from where that came from if you're Tyraz. And Unskiller is actually even just going to play greedy with the Sylvanas and wait. Just leaves it up. More stealing to come.
Yeah, that was really greedy. I mean, he can set it up a lot better now, so that was a very smart play, but you might worry about a silence in this position. There's a lot of damage on board, and Sledge Belcher was the only thing standing between you and a death.
I'm actually really surprised that Tyraz didn't go with the Power Overwhelming on the 1/1 this turn. He could have killed off the Sledge Belcher with the 1/1 Power Overwhelming, killed off the Slime just like he did, and then gone face for 5, putting Unskiller to 8 health. But instead, he's really respecting the Sylvanas. Didn't really pay off for him, as he got probably the worst result, as Unskiller took the Imp Gang Boss from him.
Yeah, you did not want to lose the Imp Gang Boss there knowing it's going to spawn more creatures. The Druid is surprisingly low on HP considering how good his opening curve was, but he's starting to take over now.
Yeah, and 7 damage is what Tyraz has here, so if he had drawn something like the other Doomguard, he'd actually be 1 off lethal this turn. So surprisingly very close here for Tyraz. But if Unskiller can draw into anything like heals, taunts, combo at any point now, I mean, he could really seal up the game.
To me here, I would say, might be dead to combo anyways. There's no way to actually get everything off the board, so you just ignore the threat of combo and pretend that he doesn't have it. It's like a risk that you have to be willing to take at this point.
Yep, definitely there comes a point playing as the aggressor in a lot of matchups where you can't really afford to be doing all the trading, you can't afford to take a defensive position, which is why I think I really would have liked to see the power roaming on that last turn rather than playing around the Sylvanas. Because the way he's played before, the turn before that, he went for the face damage rather than playing to minimize what the steal could take. And Ancient Lore is just going to heal up and really put Unskiller out of Tyraz's range.
Yeah, not sure how you could come back now. Second Doomguard into the Ancient of Lore. Mal'Ganis would just get BGH'd if he had it. Bane of Doom, I guess, could be pretty good. Bane of Doom on the Shredder.
Yeah, we don't even really know if he plays Bane of Doom, but that is one of the few cards that can, really get some crazy RNG and swing the game. Potentially get something like a Doomguard, go face for 5. But besides, like I said, crazy RNG, I really don't see Unskiller losing this. And talked about kind of how last game wasn't really a big surprise or a huge win, but beating Zoo with your Druid deck, definitely something you're happy about.
Yeah, if he wins this one, certainly Tyroz will also be a little tilted as well, knowing that he lost
Yeah.
a match that was probably his to take.
Yeah, Zoo basically falling apart at the moment.
Oh, he's going to trade with Taunt? No.
Yeah, I really don't think you can trade in this position at this point.
There's
There is still a chance for Tyroz here. I mean, he does have the power in his hand. He has the second Void Caller that's going to come out of the first Void Caller, assuming it doesn't get, like, silenced here. And Innervate for Unskiller, not a great draw, so maybe second Doomguard out of the deck could bring him back in the game. Maybe even lethal his opponent.
yeah. If
There's no taunts, so
he's going to be at 15, so
he'll
second
be
Doom
one
Guards.
off. Yeah. So really important that Unskiller innervated this hero power here. I'm sure he knew exactly why he was hero powering, but there's also sometimes you just hero power, you're like, let's just be safe. But yeah, no Doomguard out of the deck, no Bane of Doom shenanigans, just standard knife juggler. So really wants to hit the knife on this 5-1, and he's even going to trade first to try and maximize that chance. But nope. Now he definitely has to trade. That's not where you want to be right here.
Yeah, this looks pretty grim now. 13 HP. I guess he's not actually dead, but
He'd be dead if he didn't trade. It would be exactly 13 with the hero power and the shade growth. So
seeing that the Void Caller didn't spawn anything, but that Tyroz has been holding on to one card, you could have a pretty good idea what that card would be.
yep, that kind of just going back to that one turn where Tyroz had a decent opportunity to use Power Overwhelming, but chose not to, figuring maybe he could use it to push for lethal later or get through another taunt, but really just hasn't had a chance this entire game to use it. And Nerubian Egg was something he wanted a long time ago, but now he's going to have to use Power Overwhelming just to keep trading.
Oh, he gets the damage. He's not dead.
He's not dead yet. Unskiller's hand is actually, just good old Harrison Jones and VGH. So he needs to pick up something here, but there's a lot of cards that would seal up this game.
Keeper is an okay draw. I mean, the egg is kind of the threat on the board right now, but yeah, you're looking for some damage, really, to just...
I think the only way that Unskiller could straight up lose would be playing the Big Game Hunter here and then getting Mal'Ganis off the top. So, definitely not going to do that. Respects the egg, though. And, again, sets up a position where Tyroz, to stay alive, is going to have to trade a lot. But Tyroz, again, can stay alive with that Power Overwhelming draw.
Yeah, he can stay alive with 1 health left.
He'll have he'll have 1 health after the attacks come in from Unskiller. So it's basically what he has to do, and he does get a little bit of Void Terror value here.
Yeah, that was a nice play using it on the egg. Also, he saves an imp, but the egg survives the attack from Harrison, so he can get the Void Terror out.
So Unskiller did deny the 4/4 from the egg, but if he had just Keepered Face, Tyroz would actually just be dead. So, kind of, the safer option of the two. Didn't really just want to smork it with the 2 damage, but swipe off the top's going to do it. And finally, Unskiller's in the game, take a 2-0 lead.
That felt like such an uphill battle for Tyroz most of the game.
Yeah.
Probably around turn 3 or 4, each turn was looking at trying to take back the board from a disadvantage, and you want to be at advantage and trading a couple of creatures into the Druid and then also attacking their face at the same time. He didn't really get an opportunity.
Yeah, Unskiller just kept putting him into positions where he had to be the one to trade, which, I mean, when you're playing against a Druid, that's really not where you want to be, especially when you're playing Zoo. You want to be hitting face as much as possible, forcing your opponent to trade. But starting with kind of that Sylvanas turn just really put Tyraz in these awkward spots where he just had to keep trading. He played around cards that basically just weren't in Unskiller's hands, so definitely respected some options, but those options just happen to not be there. And he's actually going to queue up Zoo a third time in a row. He does have to get a win with it, but like kind of mentioned, maybe a little bit of tilt coming into play once you're down 0-2 and your deck's really been failing you.
Yeah, once you see someone lose two like that, and then they pick the same deck, you can feel they might just be at their end and thinking not as clearly as they need to be, because you probably want to switch it up even if you are confident in the deck. You know you have to win with everything, and your opponent's already seen this one. Maybe at least throw a surprise at them. So, I mean, I think Unskiller's in a great position to probably take the series. He left his Patron Warrior till last, which is a strong anchor to any lineup.
I mean, at worst, he basically, we believe, gets a mirror match. We're actually not sure what Tyraz's Warrior deck is, but presumably it's just Patron. So Patron definitely is something you would think would be able to get a win against almost any deck. Doesn't have too bad of matchups. And Zoo's definitely not that bad of a matchup. But yeah, I think I would have probably gone with a different deck this game. That's kind of just a personal rule I set for myself. Is like, okay, if I go down 0-2, just switch decks. It doesn't matter, like skill-wise and in-game-wise, but kind of just puts you in a bit of a better mental state. You're just like, okay, at least I'm just not going to get 3-0 swept with the same deck.
Yeah, I would also give Patron Warrior probably a pretty big advantage in this matchup. It just has a lot of mechanics that once you get the Patrons on the board, the Warlock has no way to take it back, so you're looking for a single moment to win the entire game.
Yeah, I think this is really interesting positioning with the Haunted Creeper, because it's basically, I think he did it for Defender Vargas, but it doesn't really work that well with Void Terror, because usually you just want to eat the Haunted Creeper or the Nerubian Egg. You don't want to eat your Flame Imp, you don't want to eat your Void Walker. And so he's kind of forced himself to not be able to play it this turn. So, not sure how much I liked his positioning there. Could have been nice to play Void Terror this turn, potentially. But Power Overwhelming, which he did top deck, so it's not like he was really planning around Power Overwhelming, will let him clear through it. So that's nice for him.
Yeah. No weapons for Unskiller. You really are looking for Death's Bite on this turn.
Yep, Death's Bite is pretty much the key card for Patron Warrior. Not only sets up all their combos, but against a deck like Zoo really helps you keep the board clear.
Wow. Opts not to play the War Axe. I saw that War Axe and I thought, oh, well, at least he got something he can kill. But this is really vulnerable now to Implosion and just a whole host of other damage increases.
Yeah, if you're Tyraz here, you just saw a Whirlwind, you know that Death's Bite wasn't in the picture really, so you do have the option to just Implosion here. 33% of the time you get an insane result, and the rest of the time, you know, it's pretty decent. So definitely a consideration this turn is, do I go all in on Implosion? But Defender Vargas definitely has a more expected result, so if he wants to go for a safe play, that's really not going to backfire on him. But I do like the Implosion here. Oh, yeah. He was feeling it. He was like, Implosion's correct. And a well played from Unskiller. Not happy about the 4.
He still has time to work with, but yeah, his hand doesn't really agree with this setup right now. Drop Emperor next turn, you're looking to have Patron plus Warsong Commander in your hand to actually make that useful.
Yep. And without those, basically the Emperor, not as big of a deal. And the Zoo is basically exactly where you want to be, which is putting on as much pressure as possible. And I'd be surprised if he didn't throw this Flame Imp out. Seemed like he was considering holding back, but Uh, Not much to punish that from the Patron Warrior on turn 6, so just I really like just developing as much damage as possible. And it looks like Unskiller is fishing for potentially a second Whirlwind. And he doesn't get it and just concedes.
Well, I mean, like, he has other chances to take it, and that wasn't winnable. I don't think he did anything wrong there. He just kind of got zooed over. He didn't have the Death Bite. He didn't have the Patron.
Yeah. Well, the turn that he actually went for that Frothing over the Axe did allow Tyraz to play Implosion, whereas otherwise he didn't actually have that great of a play. So in the context of this game, that wasn't, the best. But from his point of view, your opponent's not always going to have no 4-drop and an Implosion. So, yeah, I don't think he made clear-cut mistakes. It's just one of those games that you get zooed, and that's kind of why Tyraz has Zoo in his lineup.
Yeah, you're right that if he had used the War Axe there, all he had for the other play was Defender Vargas, and it would have been Defender on a single Flame Imp, which would be pretty weak for a turn.
Yep.
I mean, like, we were saying that Unskiller's in a good position, but Rogue is a decent matchup against Patron, and then if it comes down to the mirror, Tyraz could still sweep the series from disadvantage.
Unskiller is definitely still favored. I mean, obviously, if there's a mirror match involved and you have one other chance as well against Rogue, you'd definitely rather be Unskiller here. But yeah, like you said, it's not like a huge advantage for Unskiller. It's more of a minor advantage, and if you're Tyraz, you can't be feeling too bad. I mean, reverse sweeps happen all the time. Like you said, not bad matchups ahead, and if you think you're pretty good with the decks, you value your skill, then maybe you can outplay in these upcoming matchups.
You also got the deck out of the way that was really giving you all that trouble. You have a moral victory behind you now, so you're probably motivated, looking for every little advantage you can get. So in this matchup, to me, there's a couple of strategies. The Rogue will normally just try to develop a board and set up burst, and they have the more kind of consistent play. And then if the Warrior plays Patrons, they have to have a Blade Flurry. So the Patron Warrior can either go face, like most of the game, with their weapons and do a couple of small charge bursts, or try to set up the one big Emperor turn. But sometimes I find the Emperor turn gets punished a lot more because the Rogue can Loatheb, or they can just turn the game around very quickly as a class, so it's not as effective against something as like a Zoo Warlock.
Yeah. In this specific matchup, basically the Rogue just wants to, like you said, put on pressure and try to save the bigger weapons. Usually the Patron Warrior doesn't really have anything like a Harrison, so you can hold on to your weapon charge, always be threatening a Blade Flurry. That basically takes away one of the win conditions of the Patron, which is to just go all in on the Patrons. They usually choose not to do that against Rogue unless it's their only option. And basically the Patron has to go on more of an OTK plan with the Frothing, which takes a lot of time to set up. And Rogue isn't a deck that you have infinite time against. They will kill you eventually. So Unskiller actually has the shield block version of the deck, though, which I would say is a little better against Rogue. It lets you get more health, take your time more. He's still at 38 health, and he's basically just looking to stimmy all the aggression from Tyraz's side.
Wow, that was a super expensive play to kill an SI agent, Inner Rage, and Execute on a 3-drop.
Yeah.
How about the Mana Wraith, though?
Yeah, the Mana Wraith, actually, it's at least denied Tyraz 1 damage, potentially 2 at this point. He basically floated a mana and missed a dagger up on turn 5 with that 4-mana Earthen Ring Farseer. So Mana Wraith, not only is it a weak minion at just a 2/2 body to come out of the Shredder, it's also kind of screwed up with Tyraz's turns.
Yeah, but on the other side, I mean, the Patron Warrior is not looking at the Mana Wraith super favorably. He can't play his Grom next turn. There's just feels a little bad no matter which side of the board you're on to have your minions cost more because you want to be doing things properly.
Yep. The rogue is definitely piecing together a lot of damage here. Not really near lethal yet because the warrior has so much armor and hasn't really lost much health this game. But really, I think the card he wants now is just sprint. Just to make sure he doesn't run out of stuff to do, because he's actually out of minions besides what's on board. So if Unskiller can deal with all of them, then it's going to be really difficult for Tyraz to keep the aggression up.
That was an unfortunate oil. He wanted to hit the armor smith with the 3/3 and then go face with the other creatures, but I guess he just used the weapon attack. It's not so bad.
Yeah.
Man, Unskiller just not drawing into any weapons. These creatures are going to be his death in like one more turn, potentially. He doesn't know quite how much burst is in hand, but you have to be pretty concerned seeing 13 damage on the board and no way to stop it. Gonna execute.
Yep. Having both executes was pretty good this game. Definitely helps you keep the rogue's board pretty low, and if Tyraz really doesn't pick up anything like an Azure Drake or a Sprint here, he could realistically just run out of stuff. But he's actually playing Doctor Boom, so deal 8 mana on curve Doctor Boom.
Yeah, the 8 mana top deck. That feels really
stuff.
good though.
Yeah, I'd say that's even better than a Sprint. With both executes out of the way now, Unskiller's like mousing over all his cards, like, what the hell am I supposed to do?
And he could at least like attempt a last-ditch patron combo here if the Mana Wraith wasn't there.
If the Mana Wraith wasn't there, yeah. It's crazy.
He could have patroned into the bombs and hoped for some favorable bomb RNG to maybe save him. But yeah, that Mana Wraith worked really well that game.
Yeah.
So.
And suddenly we're tied up. Tyraz takes it to a Warrior Mirror match, and maybe with some different tech choices, maybe Tyraz actually is favored in this matchup. We really don't have any way to know until we really see their choices and their decks, but not a bad hand from Tyraz to start with. It is going to be that Patron Mirror here, so no Control Warrior shenanigans.
Yeah, there's a lot of tech choices you can put in to make the mirror match more effective. In my opinion, it's normally just the person with the more aggressive version, so the one with more inner rages or just can do stuff earlier is going to take the advantage. But there's always things like Harrison, or even some people put in Brawl to make a comeback and the mirror matches happen.
Yeah, one of the most common ways to win the matchup at first was to just go all in on patrons as soon as you could. Ideally, go turn 4 Despite face, if needed. And turn 5, you interage your patron, you make 4 patrons. And patron isn't that great at dealing with patrons. So, like you said, a lot of people have teched in Brawl. Some people tech in Harrison Jones to disrupt the Despite. A lot of different tech choices. And it was pretty interesting that Tyraz actually just coined out the Acolyte, because Warrior is one of the better classes at dealing with Acolyte. Fiery Warlock's obviously just kills it straight up. And I know in the Patron matchup, a lot of people aren't even afraid to just execute Acolytes just to deny the draw.
Yeah. Also, the coin is so useful later because you can do things like Patron, Inner Rage, Coin Whirlwind. There's a lot of setup that you can push on that extra turn with the mana.
Yeah, even just coining out this Emperor Thorison would just enable him to have so many more options. Whereas now he's kind of at an awkward spot where he had the more aggressive hand, but because Fiery Warlock's basically 2-for-1s and puts you ahead on tempo, he's now behind on board to just a single no mission winner. Ideally, he would just Despite this, but his hand's just very minion-centric. He kept 3 minions off the mulligan. He kept that Cruel Taskmaster with the Acolyte and didn't really get to abuse that synergy because Fiery Warlock just flew out of the hand for Unskiller.
When I look at these hands, I feel like you want to trade a couple cards for each player to get the perfect hand. If Tyraz could trade the Patron into Unskiller's hand, suddenly Unskiller is in an amazing position, or the Emperor even, because there's a charge for Unskiller. And then Tyraz really wants those Death Bite that Unskiller has 2 of right now.
Yep, it's pretty awkward for both players, like you said, but I think if Tyroz can get to this Emperor turn without being under too much pressure, it's pretty solid for him. If he can really just pick up anything that's not a minion, those weapons. Warsong is also a really nice pickup for him, though.
Yeah, this is looking, unless the patron's drawn for Unskiller, it's looking a lot better for Tyros after next turn.
Yeah.
What do you think about keeping the Emperor in the opening hand in this matchup?
I haven't played too much Patron Mirror myself. I have seen players do that a lot, though, and I think it makes a lot of sense. It's one of the cards that basically, even if it's answered immediately, if you got it off on 6 or 7 cards, you can't really be too unhappy. You're basically just going to open up so many options and basically take a lead, especially if your opponent has to sacrifice their entire turn to deal with it. And it's actually interesting that the player on the coin, normally going first, you get the tempo advantage, but with the coin, you get that one turn where you get to spring ahead of your opponent, and a lot of players do that on the Emperor turn, and it kind of denies your opponent's Emperor turn. And if you can do that and kind of take control of the game from there, then that's pretty nuts.
Yeah, to me it's almost like the Emperor is the way to come back into the game if you're at a disadvantage, or if your opponent has a slower hand, then it's going to be pretty much the best card. But you still would rather have the early patron combo, because if you can get the board control dominated, the Emperor is probably not going to save you from that point.
Yeah, I think Tyraz can afford the Emperor here. I mean, all of his other plays are extremely weak, is basically the issue. He's definitely not happy to Emperor into a second charge Despite with a Frothing out. He's going to take a lot of damage, but he'll get a 0 mana Execute to use on it next turn. He can Patron combo off with a Whirlwind and a Battle Rage. I really can't see anything other than Emperor coming out this turn for him, and he decides the same as well. So now, I mean, Tyraz basically, even though the Emperor gets immediately answered and he's going to take a lot of damage, but a Grim Patron off the top could be like the one thing that saves him.
Wow, that was an absolutely ridiculous draw off the slam.
And this is really smart from Unskiller to sacrifice off his No Mission Mentor. This gets him the same amount of damage because that Frothing is out there. Saves him some health, which isn't too relevant, but most importantly, just denies the Patron combo from Tyraz. And suddenly, after a top deck, one turn before Tyraz was about to go off, Unskiller goes off and makes 6 Patrons and a 14-3.
Yeah,
that's nuts.
Don't know if there's any way to come back now. That was just the perfect setup for Unskiller there. He slammed, had exactly enough mana to play the Patron.
Tyraz could get rid of 2 Patrons. He could get rid of 4 Patrons and the 14-3 this turn. It would leave him with no Patrons, so he's really going to need to draw like an Inner Rage. This is going to take up all of his mana, but because of the way the Patrons work, Whirlwinding first won't spawn any extra Patrons for his opponent. So that's kind of the silver lining here. Really still not what you want to see, but...
He Battle Raged into double Inner Rage. Maybe you could...
Yeah, you could trade off for every single Patron just to stay alive, but... I mean, with Unskiller only having 3 cards in the hand, maybe that would actually be okay with the Grommish in hand to kind of try to come back. He drew 1 Inner Rage. I'm not sure how the roping went. I think he actually did rope an attack.
Yeah.
Yeah, he roped 1 attack, so that's...
Oh, and that's huge, too, because if he had killed the 3-2... If he had killed the
3-2, then there'd be no more spawning. But with the Warsong Commander and Frothing and Task, that's actually just going to be enough. And despite a noble comeback from Tyraz, Unskiller is going to take it in the Patron Mirror with a crazy Patron top deck on the one turn before he was about to just get crushed.
Yeah, that was a good game. I mean, Tyraz might kick himself a little for not killing the Patron there with the rope hitting him, but
Yeah, it actually was relevant. Unskiller would have not had lethal. I think he still would have been ahead, but unfortunately with Patron, it's one of those decks you really have to go quickly. But we'll be going to a quick 2-minute break, guys. We'll be back with the next match and more of qualifier number 3 after this.